Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps. Today we look at Magadan, a city of some 99,000 and the largest port in northeastern Russia. For many Russians, Magadan is associated with suffering and sorrow. Home to Stalin's gulags, an estimated 2 million prisoners were killed there. To tell us more about Magadan and the situation of Catholics living there today, it's my pleasure to welcome to our studio Father Michael Shields, founder of the Brothers of the Heart of Jesus community in Magadan. Father Michael, thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you, Mark, for inviting me.
Father, you grew up in Alaska, which is actually not far from Magadan.
4 hours by plane.
What was it like growing up in Alaska?
I lived an incredible childhood in Alaska. My parents came up in the 1940s, and we lived in the bush, it's called. We grew up with dogs and dog sleds and moose and bear, and I learned to love the outdoors and mountain climb and all the things that Alaska's known for.
When did you first experience a sense of a vocation?
I can actually say probably when I was about 7. But it changed along the way, and I always say that God speaks to me very clearly. And another time was when I was around 18, and then finally I got the message after college. I have a degree in art, and the Lord said, go and be a priest, and at that time I knew that that was the direction of my life, that it was the best decision and the best direction for my life.
Now you served as a priest in Alaska.
Yep.
And then you came to a crossroads in your vocation.
I served as a priest for about 10 years. And then I did something that was quite dangerous for a priest. You ask the question, you open up the scriptures that you're going to preach the following Sunday and ask, can I live these scriptures? Can I live this gospel? And everything opened up at that moment. And I said, I want to live this gospel. What is it that the Lord would like for me to do for the rest of my priesthood? And so I went on actually a fast and a prayer time of about 6 months, seeking what the Lord wanted. And at that time, I happened to be connected to two visits to Magadan, and it changed my life.
I was going to ask you, how did you first come to Magadan?
Well, it was in the 1980s, the late 1980s, when Perestroika came, the rebuilding of Russia. And I was invited with my archbishop to visit Magadan, a closed city to Americans, a city, as you said, of the gulags. It was for a week visit. I celebrated the Mass, first public Mass in Magadan ever, over 300 people, non-believers. And at that time, I was touched deeply. I remember giving out small crib sets and children coming up and asking, who are these characters? And adults not knowing the name of Jesus. And a whole mission field opened up to me. And I kind of fell in love with Magadan at that time.
Although at the beginning, when you first came back from Russia, you thought, I never want to go back.
I came back a year later. And Perestroika had given many promises, but Russia was very harsh. And I was met at the airport with guns, and the customs officials were very cold, and the romance of Russia died very quickly.
So you had the first positive experience.
Absolutely, a romantic experience.
And then the negative experience.
And then I actually said at that time when I came back the second time that was done. My Russian experience was complete, and I'll move on with my life. And it was a great grace.
You, in fact, to the point where you asked a priest to grant you an exorcism to get rid of this sense.
Yeah. I was on a 40-day retreat with the Jesuits. It was a discernment retreat because at this time I knew God was going to do something different with my priesthood. I loved being a diocesan priest, but when I opened up the scriptures, I knew that I wanted to take the vow of poverty. So I sold everything and tried to live a deeper life of poverty. And during the retreat, what happened was I heard during the temptations of Christ, during the retreat, go and pray in the camps. And I knew at that time that meant to go return to Magadan, which I did not want to do. And I said to my retreat director, please do an exorcism because that is not of my will. Well, indeed it wasn't, but it was the will of God. And what happened was God changed my heart. and the fears that were there disappeared, and joy appeared. And that joy to this day is the basis of vocation to live in Russia.
Before you went back to Russia, you took further orders, holy orders, to become a monk. Why did you do that?
Because I realized to go to Russia, I needed all the equipment that God could give me, because it's a harsh environment, and I'd already felt the spiritual warfare there, which would say, because the spiritual atmosphere where so many people died, and many of them for their faith, was tangible. And I'd always had in my heart, I had known Blessed Brother Charles de Foucauld for many years, and I always ran a group for priests called Jesu Caritas, and I always had a desire to live his life. And at that time, I just took private vows from my local bishop, who agreed, connected with the little brothers, letting them know that this is what I wanted to do, to take a life as a monk, living the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience under the spirituality of Brother Charles, and then to go to Magadan with that spirituality.
In fact, there is also now a significance, because in the Russian tradition, a monk has a particular significance, a particular value, isn't it? How would you...
Russian spirituality is a monastic spirituality. The monasteries that were developed, then cities would develop around the monasteries. And so the monastic spirituality, I would say, is very much orthodox, where you have a monk would be a holy father for children, spiritual children. And so I see it very much connected with developing the spirituality in Russia for myself.
Now, you first went to Russia on the feast day of Our Lady of Sorrows. What significance did this event or this day have?
I think because, first of all, Our Lady is very present in Russia. She's everywhere, and her presence is felt and prayed through. And sorrow is the name of Magadan, because so much suffering was there. And so she has been the presence of my life, Our Lady of Sorrows, who holds those who suffer in the prison camps. And there's actually an icon that was written, and you write icons, you don't paint them, called Our Lady of Magadan. And she's holding the broken body of Christ after he was crucified. And that's been kind of the symbol of the presence of Our Lady in Magadan. And
many would say, coming to this question of Magadan's traumatic history, many would say, for Russians, let's say Magadan is for Russia what Auschwitz is for Europe.
There's a feeling when you say, even to this day, when I fly and I say I'm from Magadan, people say, why? What did you do? So there's a feeling that there is a symbol of the camps there. In fact, there's a Russian saying that says, come and visit me in Magadan. And they say, no, better for you, come and visit us. Because once you go to Magadan, you stay. You're exiled, and that during the prison camp situation. So it really has become a symbol of the Stalin repression and of the harshness of the Stalin repression, because Magadan was distant, a long distance from Moscow, and you would take months to be sent there, and once there you would not return.
In fact, part of your vocation was the sense that you would go to a place where other people had no...
Yeah. Part of the vocation was to go and pray in the prison camps, and because Magadan was the symbol, and Magadan was the place where people would associate the prison camps, that's where I was called.
It's to go freely.
For those who did not go freely, I was to offer myself as an offering for those. And also, I knew from the very beginning that I would be a citizen, that's my desire in my heart, to become a Russian citizen. First time I asked for that was in 1994, within a year. They didn't know what to do with me, because no American had ever asked to become a citizen, in Magadan specifically, to become a Russian citizen.
So you want to be buried in Russia?
I have a place picked out already to be buried in Russia.
Coming back to those who suffered in Magadan, there are still survivors today.
One of the gifts that the Lord gave me was not only to pray in the prison camps, but to meet those who suffered in the prison camps. And it's already almost 10 years I've been working with them. It took 5 years to build up a trust, because many of them did not have a trust. Even when we first started the Catholic Mass, many of them didn't come to Mass because they couldn't believe that a Catholic Mass would actually be said in Magadan.
They didn't trust you.
They didn't trust. And so when we gathered people that had prison camp experience, and through word of mouth, we started gathering on the last Saturday of every month in a public library. And it was done publicly, which was unheard of. And I had as many as 80 people coming, but they wouldn't speak about their prison camp experience. They would come, but they wouldn't speak about it. And little by little, we developed a trust level. So the last 5 years, we recorded their stories, both audio and also written form. And just recently have published a book of 25 prison camp stories, witnesses of their life in the prison camps.
You've subsequently built a chapel to the martyrs.
We have a small chapel where we pray before the Blessed Sacrament. One of the gifts of the spirituality of Brother Charles is a deep love for the Blessed Sacrament. We begin our day with an hour of adoration, end our day with an hour of adoration in the Chapel of the Martyrs. On this chapel there is a stone wall where we've placed crosses for those that we know died in the prison camps, for friends and family. And it's a daily, where we celebrate daily liturgy. So many of the people who suffered in the prison camps, who come to daily liturgy, pray in the Chapel of the Martyrs for their friends and relatives who died in the camps.
What is the size of the diocese today that we're talking about, and how many Catholics are we talking about?
We're talking, the size of the Catholic population is, all in Russia, is no more than about 1 million right now. Our diocese, the largest diocese, the mission diocese in the world, probably the size of the United States plus Canada.
Put together.
Put together. I laugh because my parish boundaries are the size of France. So the boundaries and the geographical distances are great. And we're isolated because there's no road system, really. There's no train system. The only way to get to Magadan is by boat or by plane. And so we have a very poor road system out of Magadan called the Trasa, which was built by the prison camp survivors, and every small city or town was a prison camp. Magadan was one large prison camp.
That's the famous Road of Bones.
Road of Blood and Bones, which was built by the prison camp survivors, and it was named that because literally people would die and be buried in that road itself. And this was witnessed to by people who built the road, who I have had conversation with, that were in the prison camps.
When you first started, you started in a simple apartment. You had the Holy Mass in an apartment. Now you have a church and a monastery. Did it ever seem impossible?
It seemed absolutely impossible. To build in Russia was a terrible trial and a great challenge. The apartment is, many churches right now in Russia, the Catholic churches were taken over by the communists, are slowly being given back. Some are not being given back. Some are still used as organ halls, and the Catholics use them on Sunday for their masses. Magadan never had a church because it was the place of the prison camps, and so people celebrated whatever liturgies there were. Priests there obviously were underground liturgies. So the first place was on Lenin Street, a chapel in the apartments, but we became too large. And so seeking help from many sources, we built this church in 4 years, all by Magadan construction. People worked in Magadan, and it's a monastery church together right now.
What would be the size of your congregation?
We have about 250 people in the church, which is in Russia a nice sized Catholic community. But the influence of the church obviously is greater than the people that come to the church, because now for a Russian you need two things. You need a priest and you need a khram, you need a church. And so once the church was built, then the Catholic population became visible and the Catholic presence became official. And once that happens, then there's an openness for the Catholic Church, which it's always a minority in Russia and always will be a minority, but to serve the Catholic population, that church needed to be built.
You are very close to the spirituality of Blessed Brother Charles de Foucauld. What drew you and what draws you still to this spirituality?
Brother Charles was always in my heart from the very day I entered the seminary, because I read his abandonment prayer, and it's really turning oneself over completely to God. When he came back to the church and lived a rather pagan life for a while, he said his vocation happened the moment he received the Blessed Sacrament, when he received confession and Eucharist. And my own sense of Brother Charles was his radicalness to be amongst people. He lived in the northern climate, northern deserts of Africa, amongst the Muslims. And what he said, he practiced the presence of the gospel with his life, to shout from the rooftop of his life the gospel of Jesus Christ. And he wanted to be a universal brother, which he received than anybody into his home. That radicalness always stayed with me. And when we came to Siberia, it's also a desert, a northern desert.
I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
what is the similarity between the northern deserts of Africa among the Tuareg and Siberia?
It is similarity because it's isolated. And in fact, although you would say the Orthodox presence is there, that most people are non-believers. And so there is a sense of the isolation and in amongst of people who are learning to believe again. Maybe that would be the best way. And a place of pustynia. Pustynia is Russian word for desert. My spirituality with Brother Charles is to spend 2 days a week in a pustynia, which is a small dacha, small shack, where without electricity, with heat provided by coal and wood and candles, I pray there with the Blessed Sacrament and the Scriptures, seeking God's Word.
How big would that be?
Oh, it would be 6 feet by 3 feet, maybe.
A stove, a bed?
A stove, a bed, and that's it. A stove, a bed, the Blessed Sacrament, and the statue of Our Lady.
And how many days do you spend?
I would go from Sunday night. I go from Sunday night till Tuesday afternoon to pray there. And seek, again, a pustynic is one who seeks God's Word. When he opens up the door to the pustynia, he opens up the door to his heart and says, this time and this life is yours. Do with me what you will. Whatever you do, I thank you. And so it's a time of deep listening. And I've learned that spirituality is my spirituality. So it's partly a life as a hermit and partly as a life as an apostolic minister amongst his people. Our rules really are nothing more than the corporal and spiritual works of mercy.
You work a lot, and the community works a lot with young people, particularly the abandoned.
Yeah.
And there have been some extraordinary stories.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, can you tell us about one particular young person, Tamara Konilova? What was her story?
Tamara is a typical young woman in a certain section of Russia, which is called, she was raised in the Russian Detsky Dom, in the homes of children, without a very high education. She socially was handicapped and probably mentally somewhat handicapped. She was an orphan. Her parents both died, and she was left by herself, raised in the Detsky Dom, and lived on. Then, when she left this system, there was no support, so she ended up on the streets, basically living by prostitution, trying to live the way she could live. She ended up coming to the parish, and for the first time, as she said later, she felt love, and she knew this was her place, and she sacrificed an awful lot to stay with us, to give up this life. And little by little, I mean, her life was terrible. She was thrown from a 3-story building, broke her back. She was abused and was beaten up. She lost a child. It was in her womb out of abuse. And basically, when she found the church, she found a home. And I consider her one of my great gifts, because she's one of those people, you look at her life, she says, how can every day she be so joyful? And she says, I knew what I had, and I know what I have. And the home in the church is her joy. She now works in the church. She's actually our cleaning lady, and she's the one that brings us fresh jokes every day.
How has Russia changed you as a man and as a priest?
As I said, Russia will break you, and it broke me in many ways. In the best sense, I had to surrender my will. I remember at first coming to Russia. I'm an American, so our American mentality is to fix things. So I went to fix Russia, fix people, and you can't fix Russia. There's a Russian poem that says, you can only believe and love Russia. And so what happened was, this is a very simple story. It's kind of silly in one level. My water faucet broke, and I couldn't fix it. I changed the faucet, I changed everything, and it kept dripping. And there was something inside of me that finally had to give up the ability to fix this water faucet. I sat one day before and I said, do I need to fix this water faucet? And I said to myself, no, I don't. And it was a symbol of, do I need to fix people? I said, no, I don't. What I need to do is suffer with them. And in suffering with them, things change. Your heart changes and they change. And I think that spirituality then put an entire new view into my heart and to my life. I wanted to help the poor, but I was always looking for the poor that I wanted to fix. And what happened was I looked at the people who came to me. Every person who comes to me now is mine. Be it the alcoholic who daily almost comes to eat with us at lunch. The young woman like Tamara who comes for help for a loaf of bread. I made a pledge once that I would buy an extra loaf of bread every day. And I would make sure that once a day I would break open my heart to whoever came to give one loaf of bread away. And that was a kind of a symbol that I don't need to fix people. I need to be with these people. And then my love for Russia just bloomed after that. It became clear to me that God has called me to be here for the rest of my life.
But Russia can betray you.
Every day. Every day. One of the acts of mercy, the corporal acts of the spiritual corporal acts of mercy, is to receive betrayal openly, to forgive. And I pledge within my own heart is, I know every day I'll be betrayed. Every day there will be a betrayal from someone, even close to people who work with me, and it happens every single day. And you have to be prepared then to give up that betrayal at the end of the day, because you cannot live in that sense of betrayal. You can't live in that Russian called abida. You can't live in that offense. You have to give that up. So I decided the only way to do that is, I don't have this spiritual capacity, but the Lord does to work in my heart. So I would couch myself with the Blessed Sacrament. In the morning I'd pray before the Lord in expectation, and the evening I'd pray in the Lord in forgiveness. And before the Blessed Sacrament to receive that grace, to give back to Him the ways in which people betray you. And it's a regular event daily.
What projects do you have before you now?
It's really a great grace that's happened recently. First of all, one of the main projects that I had, I would say a project, the main desires I have is to see children be born in Russia. We need to have more children. The abortion rate is horrendous. For every 10 births, there are 13 abortions. I had one prayer group and a healing weekend for women who had abortions. During this weekend, there's a time where you light candles. There were 5 women on the retreat, and you named the children who were aborted. And for the 5 women, there were 47 candles. And so the level of abortion is horrendous. So what we decided to do is not just speak from the pulpit against abortion, but speak from the pulpit to give hope for the young women to save their children. And so we've offered to take care of the children for 3 years for whatever they need, if they keep their children. And I always say that I'm a grandfather, surrogate grandfather for 8 children already. And so that's one of the main movements that we have, is to save children and to take care of the families, to take care of the mothers, to get them education. The others is the repressed. And then Russian spirituality. The depth of the Russian heart is contemplative. So it was always very strange to me. When I would put the Blessed Sacrament out to pray for, I didn't have to explain to a Russian, kneel now before the Blessed Sacrament to pray. They just knelt. Young people who didn't know Jesus would kneel before the Blessed Sacrament. Elderly, of course. So the heart of the Russian is contemplative. So I realized to develop that spirituality, that place of conversion in Russia, you have to open up the heart. And so we've begun the project to develop the postinia, not just for priests and religious, but for laity. And so we have postinic rooms in the parish where people can come and pray for 24 hours, or for 10 hours, or for 3 hours, because the Russian life is very compact and very busy. They work very hard. They live in small apartments. There's no place to be free. There's no place to free. So we want to open up this Postinic life and actually build Russian Postinias like they did in the early days, to have log cabins on the church property for people to come and pray.
In speaking with you, I get the sense that there's a window of opportunity here.
Absolutely.
If you were to make an appeal to our viewers, what would that appeal be?
I think people have an impression that Russia is democratic now, and Russia is already moved into the realm of self-support. It hasn't. The church in Russia needs support to give this hope to people. And I think I'm moving into the prison ministry right now. For the first time in 13 years, I've been invited to go into the prisons. The prisons are in horrendous shape. We're going door to door to the poor. We've given lists of people who are dying of cancer or very seriously ill that the medical system has given up on. We're going with Sisters of Mercy from Poland, from America, that have joined me. So that need for medicine, for care, of course the children that have been thrown to the streets because parents have alcoholism. We'd like to start soup kitchens. So there is every opportunity right now to help and give this hope to Russia.
Father, it feels like you're full of energy and full of enthusiasm, and I'd like to thank you for having been with us, for having shared all your experiences, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Mark.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today on our program. If you would like to know how you can help Father Michael Shields and his work in Russia, I would encourage you to consider the contact information at the end of this program, and I look forward to seeing you next week on Where God Weeps.